Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you again. Let me know how my mic levels are because I plugged my dynamite stick back in. I'm gonna blow this shit up, baby. Um, Let me know because last time I haven't used it for a while, and last time I used it, it made me so loud that I was just like popping and everything was just fucking crazy. But I'm trying it again, and maybe it'll be better. You can let me know. I know my voice is still a little bit fucked, but we'll see. I've got this Oregon Alabama game on over here. Still college basketball. I know it's a college football day, but I told you this is going to be one of the best games of the day. And it is crazy. The Houston San Diego State game before it was crazy. Houston totally imploded in that game. They've lost, I think, 3 games now. Really crazy. I don't know how they blew that game. Being a good defensive team, having a double digit lead in a game that's at a pace that you like and being the better team. I don't know how you implode like that. And I saw it happen, and I still don't know. Crazy. Losing in overtime. But I'm having a good day. I'm going to get to my NFL analysis in a second. Oh, well, finally, we have a viewer. Yeah, here we go. Let's go, baby. Bring it. Um, yeah, I mean today. I mean, what's my record today? Right now, I know I'm still waiting on this over in this hockey game. It's a late night hockey game. Vegas, Utah. Vegas not holding up their end of the bargain, but Utah I think scored at least 3 goals in the first period. Last I saw, they were up 6-0. So all I need is 1 goal in the entirety of the third period. Man, just give it to me. Just let Vegas get some garbage time goal or let an empty net happen. Whatever's gonna happen, just give me this fucking over. I want to have a great day. Even if I lose, I'm gonna win today, but I want to have a better day than that, man. Let me just check real quick to see what was my record today. I don't even know. I think I was 3-2 in college football, 2-0 in college basketball. So I think I'm sitting at 5-2 right now. And if I get this, I'm going to be 6-2 on the day. But if I miss the hockey play, which would be real bullshit, no goals in the third period would be bullshit. But if I lose that, I'll wind up with a 5-3 day. So still a winning day. I think I'm right about that. So college football, I mean, UL Monroe looked like they were going to cover. They were hanging in that number the whole time, man. They had a bad interception early in the game that set up a short field for Louisiana and handed them a touchdown, so that was not good. But even with that, they were hanging in that number, and then they just eventually kind of lost it. I mean, they're just not a good team, but they were almost wire to wire covering that. They only fell behind by more than the double digits late in the game, and they had a couple of chances maybe to get a touchdown back and backdoor that thing again, but it just didn't happen. It looked like it was going to be a cover. So that one was kind of brutal to take. UL Monroe, by the way, I got them at plus 10 last night, I think. And then I looked this morning and they were down to like 8.5, or like right before the games kicked off, they were down to 8.5. So I'm like, well, I crushed the closing number on that. So I had good value on that, but whatever. So that one was not a win. Michigan State was certainly not a win. You cannot explain to me how teams like Wisconsin and Michigan State, these Big Ten teams, in those games where their opponent is kind of a middling team that doesn't need to win the game. This team, Michigan State and Wisconsin, they're both at home needing a win. For Michigan State, it means even more because they haven't been in a bowl for years now. How do you have that pitiful an effort in that game? I just can't understand it, man. Even though you could argue that Michigan State, yeah, it's because they have all these new faces there and new coach, whatever. But yeah, they've been playing with these guys for the entire season now. So I can't explain that. LSU was a winner a little while ago, which I got a little bit worried about that because Noosemeyer, LSU's coach, Noose. In the South, you don't want to have Noose in your name, man. Noosemeyer went down early in that game. He got hit from the blind side, and he took a pretty hard hit, and he got injured, and he went out of the game, and I was like, oh, crap. I might lose this LSU play, but didn't even matter. I don't know who LSU's backup is, but whatever it was, whoever it was, still did fine. LSU put up a nice amount of points in that game, got me that win anyway. What was the other college football game I had? Oh, Western Kentucky. That was a close one. That was way lower scoring than I thought it was going to be. But Western Kentucky, they had a little bit extra motivation was enough to get there, I think. They got me that win. College basketball was like no sweat. Well, maybe a little bit of sweat, but not a whole lot. With Ohio with a nice easy win there by margin. And then Lehigh, Lehigh was in kind of a close game for a while, but once it got into the most important portion of the game later in the game, Lehigh was able to do it as well. So that gave me the win there too. What's up, Nate? You went 3-1 on your end. Duke, Marshall, Georgia Southern, Arkansas State. Nice. Hell yeah, man. I was not totally sure about that Marshall one, even though I know, well, Marshall did need to win the game, but I'm like, man, Marshall, as an underdog at JMU, I don't know, but Marshall, I think, had more motivation in that game, so that made sense. Duke, you got lucky, man. I'll tell you that. I don't know if you saw how that Duke game ended, but they were in a tied game, and they had like a 50-something yard touchdown pass on the last play of regulation. It was going to go into overtime at the very least, and I don't know what happened there. There was just a massive lapse on defense for Wake Forest there. That was insane. I don't know what that was. And then Georgia Southern, they also had the motivation, I think, right? Because Georgia Southern and Marshall were both battling to get into the Sun Belt Championship, and I think Marshall, because they were ahead of Georgia Southern, I think by them winning, I think they held serve, if I'm not mistaken, because I think if Georgia Southern wound up Georgia Southern had the tiebreaker over Marshall, I think, right? But Marshall, if they both won, Marshall stayed one game ahead of them. So I think Marshall is in the Sun Belt Championship now against Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I missed, I was going to see what happened in this Oregon-Alabama game, and Oregon was up 2 with 4 seconds left. I didn't see what happened in this game. Alabama, by the way, they lost Wrightsell Jr., I think is his name. He's one of their guards. He's basically, he's like a three-point specialist, but, I mean, Alabama, they have a lot of three-point shooters, so I don't know how much it's going to matter, but it looked like he had a really bad ankle injury towards the end of the first half of this game here. Like, it looked bad. He couldn't put any weight on it. There was speculation it might be a torn Achilles, so that would suck for Wrightsell Jr. there for Alabama. I don't know how much it's going to affect Alabama overall as a team, but anyway, yeah, I don't know what else I have to say about any of this. I'm just rambling right now, but just tell me if we get a Utah or Vegas Knights goal here, because all I need is that one goal in the final period to put that thing over, and then I'll hit on that one. I'm gonna hit on it, man. It's a sexy over there in that one. Let me get my screen ready here, because we're gonna talk NFL, right? That's why we're here. And by the way, I will mention, because I have not mentioned it yet, yesterday's Black Friday game. I mean, if you've seen my Twitter, you know what I'm going to say, but I think anybody who's not a Chiefs fan is going to agree with me on this, that it's just becoming absolutely blatant that the refs are rigging these games for the Chiefs. Like, if anybody saw this game and everybody's like, oh, well, the Raiders should have made one of those field goals that they missed. Yeah, okay, well, Carlson, I know one of the ones that he missed was like a 51-yard field goal. So, like, is he supposed to make that every time? No. Maybe he missed the other ones might have been more makeable, I guess. But, look, it comes down to what happened in that play right there, okay? Everybody saw this. The Chiefs are not that good, dude. They cannot win by margin, even at home against a bad team. They're seemingly incapable of doing it. They just don't have the offense to do it. And we know in the past we've seen them, like, get away with shit like this. Like in that Atlanta game earlier this year, which was a Sunday night game, I think, especially that one where Atlanta was basically about to score to win the game at the end, and Kansas City, one of their defenders, just ran over Kyle Pitts in the end zone, and no pass interference was called. So there was that one. That was total bullshit. I think there was another one. I think there were definitely a couple other ones in a couple of these other games, but Cincinnati, I think there was a PI call on Cincinnati in that game, which was a really close game at the end that kind of took the game away from Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati was going to get the ball back, if I remember correctly, and it sustained a Chiefs drive by flagging Cincinnati for pass interference when it was the wrong call. But nothing was as ridiculous as what happened yesterday. And if you guys didn't see it, I'll try to explain what happened, because I had it on. I was watching the end of this game because I picked the Raiders to cover the spread in my pick'em pool after my nice 0-3 Thanksgiving picks there. I got the Raiders cover right, but man, the Raiders, they had been winning the game 17-16 in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs retook the lead with a field goal. Raiders had one last chance, down 2. So if they get in field goal range, they can attempt a field goal to try to win the game. All right, yeah, it makes sense. They got a nice pass over the middle to Brock Bowers, who's disgustingly good as a rookie tight end. Got him past midfield. They pretty much got down into field goal range, and they had a little bit of extra time left. So I think what they were going to do is there were like 15 seconds left, something in that range. And the Raiders didn't have any timeouts left, I don't think, but I think they were going to have time to maybe get one more play, spike it, and then set up like a little bit of a more makeable field goal for them. And what happened was they snapped the football. Aiden O'Connell seemed like he wasn't totally ready for it or whatever. And the thing was that the Raiders were not lined up yet. They were trying to quickly snap it because they were running forward after the previous play, trying to get set, in a hurry-up offense. Everybody has to get set. You snap the football. Like, at least one of their wide receivers was definitely not set yet. So that's what the flag should be. It's obviously a penalty. It should be an illegal formation penalty. And that's what was called from the top judge. The referee at the top came in, was going like this. That's an illegal procedure penalty on the offense, either a false start, illegal formation, whatever the case may be. That's what he's signaling. He whistled it dead. So it's a dead ball. And it also so happened that the ball was fumbled because they still did snap it, and they fumbled it, and Kansas City picked it up. No ref even signaled that it was a fumble recovered by either team, even though the Chiefs were obviously signaling that it was, but no ref signaled that. The only signal had come in from that top judge: illegal procedure, dead ball. That means it's a 5-yard penalty. It means you replay the down. The play does not happen. The snap does not happen. It's dead ball. That's what the call is. Then the refs, they all get together. We're watching this live on Amazon Prime, Black Friday. They're doing this. They're discussing this for like over, I don't know, like it must have been at least a couple of minutes. And then the refs come back and they go, oh, yeah, it's actually an illegal shift because that means that the snap does count, and it's a fumble recovered by the Chiefs, and the game is over. What? Although the Chiefs had to, snap it one more time, but they could just kneel it out. Total fucking bullshit. Gracie Hunt. Who's Gracie Hunt? I don't fucking know. I don't know all these names, man. I know Kareem Hunt. Is she Kareem Hunt's wife that he beat or something? I have no idea who Gracie Hunt is. But what I'm saying is, this is complete bullshit. Like, right in front of our eyes, the refs openly just had a meeting and colluded, and, like, we're going through the rules, like, hey, what rule can we apply here to give the ball to the Chiefs here? Get fucked, man. I'm so sick of it. Everybody's got to be so fucking sick of this. This is like the Patriots during that era where they were like winning every game by the skin of their teeth, and it seemed like it was always on some mistake by the opponent or some reffing call that went their way. This is the same thing again, man. Fuck the Patriots. Fuck the Chiefs. Fuck any team that's like a dynasty that's somewhat illegitimate like this, all right? This is just complete bullshit at this point. Now I'm going to actually start talking about the NFL this week, where I'm 0-1 already this week. Yeah, I'm pissed about it. Heiress to the Chiefs. All right, so Hunt is their owner's name, I guess. All right. I'll have to look her up. I don't know what she looks like. But she's an heiress, so she's going to have money, so maybe I should go and marry her. But, it's already cold enough where I am in New England, man. Do I want to go into more of a cold environment in Kansas City? Not really. All right. NFL this week, man. We already have 4 games have already been played, so this is a bit of a shorter card. I have 2 plays, and I'll mention another game that I almost want to play that's very close to being a play for me and making my card, which is in the Monday night game. I'm going to talk about both night games. I don't actually have a play in either of them right now. My almost play, the one that's like the first one off my card, is in the Monday night game. Both of my plays are ugly, ugly plays in the middle of the day tomorrow and Sunday. They're both in the 1 p.m. games, I'm pretty sure. So we get them both done right away, and we'll see what happens. But that's just what the situations lead me to, man. So I'm 0-1 this week with that fucking Dolphins play. It was a sandwich spot for Green Bay. Still didn't even matter. Tua, like I said, he didn't even play that badly in that game. The cold didn't seem to affect him specifically that much, and they just still didn't do it. Whatever. Dolphins defense actually played well in the second half of that game. Still didn't matter. They put themselves in too much of a hole. All right, let's start talking about some of these games here. Games that have a little bit of a situational angle to them. JC, what's up, man? Nice timing because I'm 15 minutes into this video and I haven't even talked about any of these games yet. Let's get it. Let's do it. Titans, Redskins here. I'm going to talk about this. Oh, and by the way, the Redskins, there's an interesting situation there where there's I think one of the senators from Montana is like introducing a bill into the Senate that would potentially change the name of the Washington Commanders back to the Washington Redskins, or at least allow them to use their old Redskins logo, because the Redskins logo, it actually depicts a real Native American. I don't know if this Native American is from Montana or what it is, but Montana or what it is, but like basically the Redskins logo was honoring that Native American. So like, you're really gonna disallow them from doing that? So I don't know. There's some push to maybe bring the logo back. And if they bring the logo back, I think they got to bring the name back, right? The Redskins. I mean, come on. It's a historical name. There are a lot of Native Americans who are actually for making that change back. Commanders is a gay name. I mean, it's so like pro-military, militaristic, which we know the NFL is, but it's just terrible. Anyway, this game, Washington's down from 7.5 to 6. So if you do like the Titans, you're not getting the best number anymore with the +7 or 7.5 here. 75% of the tickets, 65% of the cash. So Washington is definitely public here. And what I'm looking at here is, it's interesting because the situation would actually have me slightly leaning to Washington, because look at what Tennessee is off of, man. Tennessee just pulled off a nice big upset of a divisional foe, Houston, the team that's leading the division. Tennessee went into Houston and beat them. Huge win. So that means they're in a letdown spot, right? Well, maybe, but I don't know, because Tennessee, when you're sitting at 3-8, I don't think you really have letdown spots particularly. Like, I think you just keep going. You're just trying to win games at this point. So I don't know, but maybe that could put them in a little bit of a letdown spot, because that is a big win, beating your the team that's atop your division, like your biggest division foe pretty much. And it is a second straight road game for them, and it is an out-of-conference game, so it is not really familiar territory there, and it's not familiar territory for this man right here, Will Levis. But Washington is a public team here. But on the other side here, to go along with what I was saying with the situation, the Washington, they've lost 3 in a row, but they're coming off an ugly one where they were a double-digit favorite against Dallas, and they lost that game in that crazy, crazy ending where Washington was an extra point away from having tied the game late in the game with all those scores back and forth late in the game. They missed the extra point and then had to kick it onside, and Dallas returned the onside kick for a touchdown. I think that was after Dallas had returned another kick for a touchdown prior to that, if I remember correctly. Whatever, it's just completely ridiculous. Washington, you could argue they're in a bounce-back spot because they just lost. They lost ugly in that game, man. And debatably, they were in a bad spot coming into that Dallas game because they had just played a tough, physical Pittsburgh defense, pretty tough. And then they had a tough Thursday night game at Philadelphia, which is a big divisional game too, basically for like supremacy in the NFC East. And they did have extra time off after that, but still, that's the type of game that could potentially hang you over. So maybe that's what happened to Washington here. So back at home for a second straight game, it could be a bounce-back spot for them. But we see that the market is completely disagreeing with that, even though you could argue that Tennessee is in a letdown spot, Washington's in a bounce-back spot. But as far as the market is concerned, it is completely indicating the other way against a public Washington team. We see reverse line movement going through that key number 7, driving it down to 6. That's some legitimate market movement, man. When a number moves like that, reverse moving, which means that it moved against where the public is. The public is on Washington. Looks like the money is actually coming in on Tennessee. And the only thing that I can kind of see there is that Tennessee has the better defense. I mean, Washington's defense is bad. Tennessee's defense is not that bad. So if you're taking the points with Tennessee, you're getting an underdog that has the better defense, and that's not usually a bad way to go, really. So I can see that. And I think what you're also seeing is you kind of have two quarterbacks that are sneakily kind of going in opposite directions, and the market maybe hasn't quite adjusted to that yet. So maybe this line is a little bit too high, because Jayden Daniels, I mean, he was the guy. Everybody was, even I was like, this guy is the best of the rookie class here. He's lighting it up right now. He's the real deal. He looks good, but He's taken a little bit of a step back recently. Granted, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are both good defenses. Dallas is not, but still. That could have been maybe a hangover spot there. I mean, Chicago is also a good defense. He actually had a good game in that game, though. And the Giants actually aren't that bad defensively. Tennessee is not that bad of a defense either, though. So Daniels maybe is going to continue his kind of bit of regression here as we go here. And also, you kind of see that with rookie quarterbacks a lot because they're not used to playing this long a season, right? Like, think about it. Like, when you play in college football is ending right about now. So you're basically used to it being like the end of the season at this point, and the NFL gets more film on you, so they see what you're doing. They're going to see like what Washington is doing with Jane Daniels in there with what's his face there, Cliff Kingsbury. He's there, right? He's their OC there. Yeah, so there's going to be more game film, so teams might be able to start figuring him out a little bit too. So that could be factoring into the situation as well. And I think the public is still thinking of Jane Daniels as, yeah, like top of the rookie class, whatever. And maybe he still is the best of those guys, but he is regressing a little bit here, whereas Will Levis is actually, I mean, he's the guy that's been the laughing stock. I was laughing at him, obviously. He's the guy that just, he throws interceptions all over the place, but he's actually started playing a little bit better since he was injured or whatever it was, or he had that time off, whatever it was. He's come back and he started playing a bit better. Wants his starting job, man. He does not want Mason Rudolph to take that job from him. So, in a way, you do have these quarterbacks kind of moving in different directions and kind of both headed towards like some sort of mean here. So, I could see that being an argument for maybe the Tennessee side in this one as well. Obviously, with all those like different factors going on, I'm not going to play this game here. I don't know what happened in this Oregon-Alabama game. I don't know. It looks like it did not go into overtime, so I don't know. Maybe Oregon wound up winning the game. I have no idea. ESPN. Maybe I'm going to find out, though. All right. What else we got here? I'll just go in order of how they are, even though it means my plays will be talked about earlier in the show, because why not? I'll just go in sequential order from now on. Washington named themselves the Redskins after Henry Lone Star Dietz, the first head coach of the franchise, who was also Sioux. All right. So not from Montana, really, but Sioux, kind of up in that, like, the northern, like, plains region, basically. All right. Yeah, so that's who the Washington logo is, I assume. The Redskins logo was that guy. So that's, I mean, kind of cool history. So we're trying to erase history here by getting rid of the Redskins name. Fuck that. Bring back Henry Lone Star Dietz, man. And also, I have some Lone Star beer and pour one out for him as well, even though that's a Texas beer. I don't know why his name was Lone Star, but Texas is the Lone Star state. So I don't know. But I don't know what's up with this particular senator from Montana, like bringing this bill to the floor. I don't know. He might have like some Native American connection or something, and that's why it's going on. But obviously, I'm for this move. I mean, just bring it back. Yeah, Lone Star, it's not a bad beer. I mean, back before I went sober, I had some of those when I was in Texas. Everybody's drinking. You basically have to drink one when you're in Texas, man. It's like a rite of passage there. It's not a bad beer, especially for like kind of a mass-produced, like, what is it? Like, it's a light, is it a lager or is it a bock? I don't know. I forget. It's some sort of like kind of light beer. They drink that, and they drink the Shiner Bock there as well. So, but Lone Star is better than Shiner Bock, I would say, as a beer snob. All right. Next up, it's a lager. Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, let's go to my first play on the board here is the Atlanta Falcons plus 1.5. I'm just going in sequential order this time. Chargers look like they've gone up from a pick'em to a 1 with juice. I think you can get 1.5s out there right now. It may get to 2. There's not a whole lot of difference there. I doubt that it gets to 3 or anything like that. So just playing it at whatever underdog price there is, I think makes sense. Or just fire on the money line, because if you're taking a spread that's this low, you're basically saying they're going to win the game outright anyway. I still take the spread bet, though, and then I just put some of the bet on the money line, but we'll see, like just 10% of it. But 61% of the tickets, 59% of the cash on the Chargers. So the Chargers look like they are public with less of the cash on them, which I like to see, obviously, when I'm going to fade the Chargers here. The Chargers are going to be public because, the public has seen the Chargers play in these primetime games. And I think the Chargers were kind of flying under the radar, and now they're not anymore. The public saw them playing back-to-back primetime games, and what did they do? They put up a ton of points against the Bengals, which is a bad defense, though. They beat the Bengals, and then they played pretty competitively against the Baltimore Ravens, which is a difficult opponent, obviously, and had a pretty decent game against them, too, even though they lost. So that's what the public sees, and now the public they're on the Charger train here, man, on the Bolts train. And by the way, I completely forgot to mention that Baltimore LA game there was the return of the Harbaugh Bowl there. That's John Harbaugh still at Baltimore after all these years, and Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL with the Chargers got to face his brother again. So that was the Harbaugh Bowl there. Crazy, man. And John Harbaugh wins out again, just like he did in the Super Bowl. I forgot that was even the case in that game. I didn't even bring it up, but that was the case there. All right, so Chargers, I mean, look at what they've done, man. They were rolling. They were winning a bunch of games, and then this Baltimore game, I think that game might have stopped their momentum a little bit, man. When you're winning like this, you don't want to lose a game like this and then immediately have to play again, especially not when it's prime time. And they played 2 primetime games in a row, like I said, where they really had to step up their game and play big effort games here against Cincinnati, Baltimore. Especially Baltimore is a pretty big conference foe there. So those are big games. And now they have to go on the road to Atlanta from the Pacific Coast, by the way, to an early start time Atlanta game at 1 p.m. Although, as I always say, an East Coast team going out west is worse than a West Coast team going east. It is. So, like, the worst situation for your biological clock is when you're an East Coast team and you have to play a late night game on the West Coast that's going to go to like midnight, 1 a.m. your time. You get fatigued. It gets to be late based on your biological clock. So that's the worst spot. So this isn't as bad a spot, but it is still not great. I mean, when you're a West Coast team, you're having to fly east and play this game at Atlanta. It's going to be like at 9 a.m. your biological clock time. So that is still better than playing at 1 a.m. Your biological clock time, but it's still not that great. And it's a road out of conference game. You know what I always say about that? The road out of conference games are always the ones that mean the least on your schedule because they don't factor into the tiebreaker like hardly at all, basically. So it doesn't really matter as far as playoffs are concerned. Playoffs? And again, that was a huge couple of games against Cincinnati, and especially the one against Baltimore. I think that ended their winning momentum there. And then who do they have up next? Yeah, this is a sandwich spot. You can see on my screen here who they have up next. The Kansas City Chiefs, the team that they hung with the last time and only lost them by 7. They got to go to Arrowhead and play the Kansas City Chiefs, man. That's a monster game. That's the biggest game remaining on their schedule. They actually have a somewhat easy remaining schedule here, so looks like it's not going to be much of a problem for the Chargers to make the playoffs here. So I think this is a sandwich spot. I think they may overlook the Atlanta Falcons here. And then on the other side, the Falcons, I mean, I think the public is overlooking them too because what have the Falcons done recently? I mean, they were doing pretty well for a while, and then, they lost to the New Orleans Saints, which I played the New Orleans Saints in that game because that was the second game with Derek Carr back, and it was the fired coach spot for the Saints too. So the Saints, that was a huge situational spot for the Saints, where the Saints had like a ton going for them, and I think they were coming off that horrible loss to the Carolina Panthers. So the Saints were in a bounce back spot. Atlanta was coming off multiple pretty big wins. A bunch of big games in a row. So Atlanta was like, or a few big games in a row, a couple really. Atlanta was just, they were not in a good spot there. They got caught. I won money on that one. They lost to the New Orleans Saints. And then what happened in their next game, I thought they were in a better spot. I actually bet on this one too, and I lost on the Falcons in this one because I thought it was a bad spot for Denver in this one. But having to go out into high elevation where you don't usually play apparently was not good for the Falcons. The Falcons got absolutely killed in that game, 38-6. And then what did the Falcons do last week? Oh, yeah, they had a bye. I think that bye comes at a great spot for the Falcons, man, because they had lost 2 games in a row, and they had their worst loss of the season, 38-6 going into the bye. And I always say, when you go into the bye on a bad note, you use that bye to fix things, man, and you refocus on things. What note could be worse than losing 38-6, man? So yeah, I think that bye is going to have Atlanta refocusing and getting ready for this game. I like it. I think it's a positive spot for Atlanta and a terrible spot for the Chargers. Give me the Falcons. Falcons should win this game. That's my first play in the Sunday slate there. Let's talk about some of these other games. Steelers Bengals is a huge game, man, and this is one of the hardest games for me to read. Bengals are up from 2 to 3, 51% or 50% of tickets evenly split, and 51% of the cash on the Steelers side. I do hear some professional bettors liking taking the points of the Steelers here, and man, it's tough for me to gauge. It looks like the market is somewhat agreeing with that, with the money now looking like it's more on the Steelers side than on the Bengals side. But this is tough, man, because I can see arguments for both sides. Pittsburgh, I mean, they should refocus here because they just lost in that ugly snow game on Thursday night against Cleveland. I played Cleveland in that game. That was one of my wins last week. I think it was my only win last week in a 1-2 performance. Not good. But that was my favorite play of that week because Pittsburgh was coming off. They had just played a string. They had won a string of games, and they played that huge game against the Baltimore Ravens. That's like a win of the season type of thing, man. When you beat the Baltimore Ravens as the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's your biggest rival. And then they had to go on the road to face a Cleveland team that is sitting at the bottom of the division with Cincinnati up next. Yeah, Pittsburgh was not going to be 100% in that game, and they were not 100% focused. Now, it is a second straight road game, but all they're doing is traveling across the state of Ohio, so it's not like they're going very far, and they're not far from home either, so this is an easy travel spot for them, in my opinion. I mean, it's something that they probably do fairly often, being in this division. I mean, they're used to playing these teams in their division, so I could see this as a bounce-back spot for Pittsburgh. They got extra time off because this is a Thursday night game, but the Cincinnati Bengals, talking about extra time off, I think they're coming out of a bye, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they're coming out of a bye. So the teams that are coming out of byes, by the way, this week are the Falcons, Bengals, Jaguars. Let me think about this. I'm trying to remember now. The Jets, the Saints, I believe, and the Buffalo Bills. I think those are the teams that are coming out of byes this week. And we have no byes this week. And then next week we have 6 more byes. And then that's the final week of byes. It's just insane, man. The way the NFL structures buys now, they switched to this type of buy scheduling once they went to the 18-week season, I believe. And it's just insane where they have like a couple of weeks are just jammed with buys, and then some of the other ones don't have many at all. You really notice it when you're playing in fantasy because you're like, holy shit, I have so many people on buy this week. So many players on bye. But all right, Cincinnati, they're coming out of a bye, and they went into that bye on those 2 tough losses against Baltimore and Los Angeles, man. They played both of those games are in primetime games. I think one was the Thursday night game against Baltimore where they yet again barely lost to Baltimore. Then they had a tough spot at the Chargers. I played the Chargers in that one, and Cincinnati made a huge comeback in that game, tied the game, and then still lost at the end. They were out on the Pacific Coast. So I could see this bye is coming at a decent time for Cincinnati too, man, because they went into that bye on a tough note, losing 2 games in a row. The problem is, though, that those are 2 tough games, though. So that being the case, and now being at 4-7, I don't know, man. What mindset are they going to be in? Are they going to use that bye to fix whatever's wrong? I don't know, because was anything really that wrong when you played 2 tough games on the road and you played pretty well in those games? I'm not so sure. It's not like they had horrible games and got blown out. So maybe that bye isn't as good as it would be if they had lost those games more embarrassingly, but it is still the Pittsburgh Steelers coming into their place. So it's not like they're going to be unfocused for that game. So this one's a hard one for me to read because I could see both teams showing up in this one, and then it kind of just becomes a matter of, well, I guess kind of which team is the better team, and probably that's the Steelers at this point, even though the odds makers are actually telling you it's almost close to even, because I don't think the Bengals get that much for home field, maybe 3 at most. So the odds makers are kind of telling you that the teams are right about even, which kind of surprises me because I would have the Steelers as the somewhat better team here. I mean, the Steelers have the significantly better defense, so that's the other thing. If you do play the Steelers here, you're taking points with the better defense. And you know I always say that's never really a bad way to look unless there's really something that would have you thinking otherwise. Unless there's like really a strong situation to go against that. You usually do want to have the better defense getting points, and that is what you get with the Steelers. But Cincinnati does have the better offense here. So we'll see about that. Oh, by the way, Washington... before I forget, I was going to mention, because I saw it come up on the screen, that Austin Eckler is now on IR, so he's done for the season. It looks like, I don't know what his injury was, but if you're looking at Washington, you got to make sure of what their injury situation is as well, because they got Brian Robinson, I think, is their starting running back there. He got hurt in the game either last week or the game before then. I don't know if he's back. So if they're down him and Eckler, their running game is really going to have some issues, I think. They're going to need Robinson back at the very least because he's their primary back there. So you got to make sure that he is back if you're going to be playing that game. At least make sure what the injury situation is. Because if he's out, then maybe it makes even more sense to take Tennessee in that game. Texans, Jaguars. I mean, it's kind of an ugly game, and I'm going to talk about it because of the situation here. The Texans are actually down from 6 to 3.5, but the reason for that move is because Trevor Lawrence is seemingly coming back in this game, so that's why. So I think the line was 6 when it was going to be Mac Jones, and somehow Trevor Lawrence over Mac Jones is only worth 2.5 points. Is that really accurate? Excuse me, I don't know, because the Jaguars are a terrible team, but do we really think that Trevor Lawrence is not a huge upgrade from Mac Jones? I mean, I think he is. Mac Jones has not shown himself to be anything more than terrible, although Trevor Lawrence, since he had that collarbone injury last year, he has not looked like the same guy at all, so I don't know. But maybe the odds makers are also factoring in a little bit of uncertainty here because I don't think it's definitive that Trevor Lawrence is coming back, but it seems likely to me that he is. So that's also kind of why the line is in that range, but we'll see. So Texans are down from 6 to 3.5 because of the Trevor Lawrence probably coming back situation. 79% of the tickets and 87% of the cash on the Houston Texans side, though. So they have more of the cash than the tickets, and maybe some of that is coming in at that lower number because if Trevor Lawrence does come back, you know what I always say, that's a reverse injured player theory spot where the Jaguars, they're going to have to get used to having him back as the quarterback. He's going to have to get used to being out on the field again. So a lot of times when your star quarterback comes back, a lot of times you don't just completely hit the ground running. There's a little bit of an adjustment period there when he comes back. So that might be the case for the Jaguars here. So I'm not really sure that I would want to be on the Jaguars here for all those reasons. Reverse injured player spot, no thanks. But there are some positives that I could see for the Jaguars side here, but also positives for the Houston side here. This is why I'm talking about this game, just because there are so many factors going on here, so many things about this situation. Houston, they're coming off that ugly loss, like I said, to Tennessee, where Houston probably wasn't in the greatest spot. I mean, they'd played the Jets on a Thursday night primetime game. They'd blown that game where they had Detroit on the ropes at home. On Sunday night, I think it blew that. And then they played a third straight primetime game. It blew out their in-state rival, Dallas, in Dallas. So coming off those 3 games, I think they were just not in the greatest spot there. And they kind of got caught, and they lost to Tennessee. They did not have a good defensive performance in that game. So I could see the argument that this is going to be a bounce-back spot now for Houston here. Because you lose a game ugly like that to an ugly team like Tennessee, you're probably not going to take your next opponent for granted. So I could see Houston in a bounce-back spot here showing up for this game. But on the other hand, the Jaguars, so the things for Houston there are that Houston's in a bounce-back spot. You're getting a better line laying the points with Houston now that Trevor Lawrence is probably coming back, and he might have to readjust and reacclimate himself. So there could be that adjustment period there. So some factors to play Houston there. But Jacksonville, they're coming out of a bye, like I said, and look what they went into that bye off of. I mean, they lost to 4 good teams in a row, and it was the entirety of the best division in football. Or no, wait, excuse me, it wasn't. It was all of them except Chicago. So it was 3 of the best teams in the best, or 3 of the teams in the best division of football, and then another team that's one of the best teams in the NFC, excuse me. So Philadelphia instead of Chicago. So that makes it even more difficult. That is crazy, though, man. They played 4 NFC teams in a row, and it was 4 of the top NFC teams in a row, and they lost all of them, but they were actually pretty competitive against Green Bay, Philadelphia, and Minnesota, to some extent at least, even with Mac Jones in there. And then, yeah, their last game, they lost 52-6, and that wasn't even a misleading score. It was just pitiful performance from Jacksonville. So when you go into a bye on a note like that, that's ultra embarrassing, even if it was against one of the best teams in the NFL in Detroit. you're going to want to try to fix some things when you go into a bye on a note like that, man. So I could see Jacksonville having that bye at a good time and coming out of that bye and being focused again. And they're going to be focused when it's a divisional opponent there. So just like I said with Cincinnati, like when you're a team and you might think that you're probably not going to make the playoffs at this point, you're still going to show up when you're facing a divisional foe for the most part. So that's what's going on here. So I don't want to touch this game. I can see reasons to play both sides in this game. Although, if you forced it, gun to my head, especially at this lower number at 3.5, I would probably lean to the Houston side in this one. Not strong. And in our pick'em pools here that lock earlier in the week, we're probably looking at like the number of 6 or 5.5 there. So if it's 5.5, I might still just throw my pick down on the Houston side, but I don't know. I'm going to have to figure it out, man, because that one confuses me a little bit. Cardinals, Vikings, I might talk about just because maybe there's a little bit of a situational angle to discuss here. Vikings are up from 3 to 3.5. They got 61% of tickets, 64% of the cash. I mean, the Vikings are going to be public here because they're the Minnesota Vikings and they have a good record. Arizona, they just lost a long win streak they had. They had a 4-game win streak. Granted that win against Miami was the first game that Tua was back, so it was a reverse injured player spot, but Miami was winning that game right near the end, and Arizona still beat them. Arizona just kind of taking care of business here, and then they blew out Chicago and the Jets, basically, and then they finally had their win streak halted going back out on the road. They had a bad game last week against Seattle, so I could see this going either way here, man, because they now have a second straight road game where they have to go to Minnesota off of a big divisional game where they lost their standing atop the NFC West. They were atop the NFC West, and now they're tied with Seattle, and Seattle has a tiebreaker against them because of that. And, who do they play next after Minnesota? They play Seattle again, and if they win that game, they can probably get back into first place in the NFC West. Well, potentially, depending on what they do this week, but that's a huge game, man. And these teams in the NFC West, their aim right now is win this division. You win this division, you get into the playoffs. So that's what these teams are looking at right now. So these divisional games in this NFC West mean a lot more. So Arizona's kind of in a Seahawks sandwich here. They're in a Seattle sandwich. I don't know what sandwiches they even eat in Seattle. Probably something leftist and gay, some socialist sandwich up there. It's probably just bread with nothing in the middle of it. I don't know if I would say that that's the case here with this sandwich because Minnesota's not nothing. But Arizona, I mean, like I said, this loss, it was a tough loss. It could halt their momentum. I mean, that was a big game for them. So I'm not sure it will be a bounce-back spot. A second straight road game might be a little bit difficult, and it may be a look ahead to Seattle up next because I think these games against Seattle actually mean more than the game against Minnesota does, even though, yes, they still need to keep winning conference games as well. So I can see that going both ways, whereas Minnesota, they're coming off a big divisional win as well, sort of, but it was a third straight road game, and now they get to come back home, so that might actually help them a little bit. That was a difficult spot to some extent because it was a third straight road game, although I thought Chicago was in a difficult spot because Chicago was coming off that game where they lost on a blocked potential game-winning field goal after blowing the lead against Green Bay. Brutal loss for Chicago. And then Chicago in this game was crazy, dude. Minnesota had the game put away. I mean, they were winning by 14 in the fourth quarter. They were still winning by 11 in the final 2 minutes of the game, and then Chicago got a touchdown. I think they must have recovered an onside kick and got a field goal. So they scored 10 points in 22 seconds to send it into overtime and then still lost the game. So it was a tough game, tough divisional game, but Minnesota might actually kind of see that as maybe a close call too, and maybe Minnesota will show up after a game like that and bounce back from that. Tough for me to gauge this one, man, but I just figured I would point it out, some weird situational angles there in that one. I don't know which order I was going to because I started out looking at the schedule here. I'm not going to talk about every single game, but I am talking about the games that have situational angles that I think kind of factor into the game, which is basically every game except I don't care about New England, Indianapolis. Fuck that game. I don't know what to say about that game. Both teams are coming off losses to superior teams, and what can you even say about that game? Not a whole lot. Indy might have a little bit more motivation in that one just because they're fighting for a playoff spot. Next up, I will talk about, let me see. My other play, I guess. Is that what's up next? Yeah, I guess so. Fuck it. So you get my two plays early, and then I'm going to ramble about the rest of the game. So there's kind of a lot to say about the two night games. So I'm going to play the New York Jets +2. I already played this, but it's down to 1. But there's not much of a difference between 1 and 2 in the NFL. I mean, the field goal, the 3 is really the key number. So if you can get the Jets at whatever underdog price on the spread, I think that's fine. You're basically saying you think they're probably going to win outright, and that is what I'm going with here. Because, I just talked about Arizona being in a Seahawks sandwich here. Well, guess what that means Seattle is in? I think this is a lot worse spot for Seattle here, man, because Seattle, they're going to be in a letdown spot because they're the team that's coming off the win in that game. They're coming off multiple huge games in a row, man. I mean, look at this schedule here. They played Buffalo, though they got their asses beat by them. Then they played an overtime game where they lost a divisional game to the Rams. They did have a bye after that, but they wound up playing 3 straight games against their own division, winning and coming out of the bye at San Francisco. That's a huge win, man. You get in-season revenge against the 49ers, and you get to beat the team that I think won your division last year and won the entire conference last year on the road. Huge win for Seattle. They did not suffer a letdown after that because they're still battling Arizona for the division. Seattle beat Arizona and jumped up ahead of them for the top spot in the division. That's a huge win as well. 2 straight big wins. And now what do they have to do? They have to go to the East Coast to play an early game, which, like I said, is not that great for a Pacific Coast team, really. I mean, it's like you're playing it whatever, not 9 in the morning, but 10 in the morning. I think I accidentally said 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning, your time. It's not the greatest, really, but are you really going to be focused on the Jets? It's another road out-of-conference game, man. Just like I said with Chargers at Falcons, same thing going on here. Road out-of-conference games are the games that mean the least on your schedule. When you just beat 2 teams in your division, and that division is a cluster where every team is fighting against each other to try to win that division, and that's what matters. This game is the game that matters the least on your schedule. And, oh yeah, like I said, who does Seattle have up next after they have to go to the East Coast and play the fucking Jets? Yeah, they have to go back west, and they have to play Arizona again, which is another huge game because it's, again, going to be a battle between these teams that are all in a cluster trying to win this division. That's a huge game. This is an Arizona sandwich here, a Cardinals sandwich. I don't know what sandwiches they eat in Arizona. I'm not even sure. Some Southwest sandwich or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they eat in Arizona, but that's what Seattle is in here. They have to go out to the Jets, and not only do they have to do that, but this may be like a bad weather game too. I'm not even sure what this is going to look like here. It's 40 and clear, I guess, so that doesn't really matter. I mean, they have weather similar to that in Seattle, so I guess that doesn't really matter, but are they really going to want to go up to New York, to a place they don't really go to and play? I mean, yes, it is Geno Smith's former team in the New York Jets, but is he really going to be excited just for that, to play the Jets, when you got bigger fish to fry here, man? You got to play these games in your own conference here. And after Arizona, they also have Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, Rams. Every one of those games is bigger than this game against the Jets. So this is a spot where I think they could overlook the Jets. And then the Jets sitting at 3-8, but I think the Jets are better than this 3-8 record would suggest, man. And Aaron Rodgers, he is not having that bad of a season. I mean, look at his numbers. He's got 17 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He's got a decent QB rating, even though it's not up to his standards. But his QB rating, people are acting like he's total ass, but he hasn't been that bad this year. His QB rating isn't bad. Touchdown to interception ratio is really definitely not bad. But look at who he's facing, Geno Smith. Look at his touchdown interception ratio. It seems like the perception is that Rodgers is like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league now, and that Smith is like awesome or something. Smith has a 12-12 touchdown interception ratio. Is that good? No, it's not good at all. So Rodgers has actually been probably the better of the 2 quarterbacks recently and just over the course of the season. If you look at their season-long numbers, I think Rodgers' numbers are actually better in many ways than Smith's are. So, I mean, if you're playing the Jets here, I'm not sure that you're getting the worst of the 2 quarterbacks here either, and you're getting the better defense because Seattle's defense has definitely been vulnerable. The Jets' defense has been all right. I mean, not up to what we thought they were going to be, but they're not bad. So I think you're getting a home team getting at least a couple of points with the better defense and probably the better quarterback and in the much better spot. So give me the Jets. And the Jets, as I was going to point out, they're in a positive spot here because look at this. They're on a horrible streak here, remember. They've lost, what is this? 7 of their last 8 games they've lost after they were 2-1. That's miserable. And they lost 2 straight games going into this bye. So, yeah, you have this bye. What do I always say? You go into the bye on a bad note, you're going to use it to start fixing some things, man. And I think you're going to come out focused. I mean, you're 3-8. You're coming out of the bye. You went into the bye on a loss. I mean, I think you're going to try to fix some things, and you're going to try to focus really no matter who your opponent is. You're just going to try to get some wins to stop yourself from being embarrassed. So I think that is what's going to happen here for the Jets. I would like it better if the Jets went into the bye on that awful Arizona loss, 31-6. That would make the bye better because then you went into the bye on the worst note that you could possibly go in on. But still, a loss to Indianapolis is not great. And the Jets blew that game. The Jets were winning that game. Rodgers actually had a bad game in that one, at least yardage-wise. He did not do well in that game. But that was a game where the Jets were winning that game late in the game. Excuse me, and they blew it. I'm sorry, man. I had Mexican food, so I'm belching like all over the place right now. I'm getting over a sickness. I ate some fucking Mexican, some spicy shit. And probably, I don't know, Boston Mexican is... I mean, I always say that it's not as bad as you think it is. We do have actual, like, Mexican people here making the food, but people are going to say it's not up to par. I mean, it's not the best Mexican food you'll ever get, but it's not horrible, but it does still kind of... wreck your digestive tract, especially when you're me and you just had a McRib last night and you don't eat well enough right now. It's the holidays, man. I'm eating some shit. This Mexican food I don't think is particularly unhealthy. It was just a burrito bowl. Rice, beans, meat, jalapenos, but still, it kind of fucks you up. Anyway, yeah, the New York Jets +2. Did I take that off the screen? I didn't mean to take that off the screen. Jets +2 or +1, 1.5, whatever the hell. That's the other play that I got. Those are my 2 actual plays. Too much cayenne pepper and water. Yeah, I should actually do that. That's Aaron Rodgers' thing, right? The pepper water. Doesn't sound bad to me. I mean, I like spicy stuff. I like spicy drinks as well. So, I mean, it sounds fine to me. And maybe I should just do it. I mean, I might have some cayenne pepper in my cupboard right now. I could add it to this water. Maybe I'll do it next show. Nate, you're in Arizona? All right, so you're a Nebraska fan, but you're in Arizona. All right, the Sonoran dog. All right, what goes on that? That's a hot dog of some kind, I assume. Or it's an actual sandwich made with dog meat, right? You guys are Haitian down there? Or Chinese? No, I don't know. I assume it's a hot dog. I don't know exactly what goes on that particular thing, though, but it's probably good. I mean, I don't hate hot dogs. I do like them, so... I like most food, to be honest. I mean, obviously, I'm fucking fat. So I like pretty much everything. Buccaneers, Panthers. I guess I'll mention that game. I'm going to wind up talking about every one of these games. Fuck it. We're only at an hour. I'll go a little bit over an hour here. We're almost done. There aren't that many games left anyway here. Bucks, Panthers. I mean, I could see this game kind of going either way too, man. I mean, the Bucks are obviously going to be public here. The public doesn't want anything to do with the Carolina Panthers, even though they haven't looked as bad in their last couple of games. Bucks are up from 5.5 to 6. 79% of the tickets, but 85% of the cash. So it looks like some actual money may actually be coming in on the Tampa Bay side here. Tampa Bay, I mean, they had an easy win last week over the New York Giants, which I think that's actually kind of helpful because they came out of a bye and then they got a nice easy win, which I could see that as being more of like a tune-up type of thing where that ended their loss streak. I mean, that loss streak was against pretty good teams, really. Baltimore, Atlanta, Kansas City, San Francisco. No real shame in losing those games. So now they finally got an opponent they were supposed to beat, and they beat them easy. Now it is a second straight road game, but it is a divisional game against Carolina, so both teams might actually have reason to show up for this. But Tampa Bay, I mean, they're still not dead here. They're sitting at 5-6. They got to win some games here, and they don't have that difficult a schedule remaining here, so they can definitely make the playoffs here still. They can win some of these games, and I think that's going to keep them focused, to be honest, for all those reasons. I think that they may show up in this game, whereas Carolina, they may actually have reason to not show up as focused here, even though I know this is a divisional home game, and usually when you're a team that's like been the laughing stock of the division, you want to beat those divisional foes at home. And even when I thought they were going to be focused, that didn't happen with Atlanta coming in there and whatever. But Andy Dalton played that game. So now Carolina, Bryce Young is back in there, and he's actually started stepping up his game a little bit. He's played better recently. He's had a couple of decent games, at least in there recently. He's not the total laughingstock that maybe we thought he was. So this offense is starting to play a little bit better. But look at what they're off of, man. They went into a bye, and they came out of that bye, even though they went into that bye on 2 straight wins. They came out of it, and they caught Kansas City, I think, at a decent time because Kansas City had that game, I think, at least sandwiched in between divisional opponents or something like that. I forget exactly what it was, but I thought Kansas City's spot wasn't really that great. It was sandwiched in between Buffalo and Vegas. So the Vegas was the Black Friday game, so that might have been a game they were still looking ahead to. And Kansas City, as it seems to be almost the case week after week, Kansas City almost got caught in this game, man. Kansas City had a big lead in this game. They were winning 20-6, almost going into halftime, and then Carolina didn't go away, and they hung in that game, and they wound up getting a late touchdown plus 2-point conversion, both from Chuba Hubbard. I think it's Chuba Hubbard. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't even know, but him. I always just think of what is it? Chubba Hubba, the Ben and Jerry's ice cream there. I forget what's in that one, but he's a Ben and Jerry's ice cream flavor, man. He's really good though. He got the touchdown and the 2-point conversion there, and then of course Carolina still wound up losing on the very last play, a walk-off field goal for the Kansas City Chiefs, as is always the case, basically. Probably there was some reffing call in that one, too. I don't know. I didn't watch it, but Carolina coming off of that, they might not be in the best spot after that, man, because that was a big game. You get your shot at home to beat the returning champs, and you're that close to doing it. That game is actually maybe bigger than this game is with a team that you play every year, the Bucs, whatever. So I would not want to try to take a shot on the Carolina Panthers in this one. I might lean to the Buccaneers in that one. Born in Nebraska, moved to Arizona as a teenager. All right. Sonoran dog is, oh, yeah, I think I knew that. It's the hot dog wrapped in bacon. I don't know what a boillo bun is. Boillo bun. Pinto beans, yes. Tomatoes, onions, mayo and mustard, or mayo and mustard mixed together. Salsa and avocado puree. I mean, yeah, I would definitely try that. I don't know if I'm feeling the tomatoes on that one, and maybe not the pinto beans, to be honest, but I would eat whatever. I mean, I'll eat that shit. The mayo, mustard, whatever, anything with mustard and anything with, like, anything sort of like guac related and salsa related, all of that sounds good. I mean, now you're getting into Mexican territory there, so yeah, I would fucking eat that. I don't know what that bun is specifically, but yeah, I would eat it. Let me see here. So, Rams, Saints. Rams, I don't know why this says this line open at 6.5. Saints, 6.5. That doesn't make any sense to me unless, is there some injury here I'm not aware of? I tend to doubt it. Maybe that was just a look-ahead line from long ago, but the Rams are 2.5-point favorite on the road with juice. I mean, that makes sense to me. 64% of the tickets, 62% of the cash on the Rams. I think maybe the Saints are getting a little bit undervalued here at this point. We see the public is on the Rams, and a little bit less of the cash on the Rams here. I mean, I assume that Carr is not injured or anything like that, right? Let me look. New Orleans, I mean, we know they have a bunch of injuries here. I think McCoy, if he comes back, that's going to be big for the Saints, man, because that's something that's not going to affect the line. He's like a Pro Bowl center for them. He's really, really good, and he's been out, I think, since the second week of the season, and that's been a large part of why the Saints' offense has been so bad. So if he's coming back in this game, that's going to be big for the Saints, and it's not going to be a reverse injured player theory type of thing because it won't affect the line at all. So that would be big if that happens. Other than that, nothing that I really see on that injury report that really would matter. The Rams, they're coming off a kind of a tough loss, man. I mean, they did get blown out in this game, and I was on the Rams in that game. I expected a much better performance from the Rams in that game. That's kind of a tough loss to have to take there at home in primetime. Everybody sees you lose like that, but that can go one of two ways. Because now it could mean everybody sees the Rams not look good in primetime, and now they might not want the Rams anymore, but I don't think that's the case here because you can see the public is still on the Rams here And that's because the public's going to give the Rams a pass for losing to the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles have a lot of hype right now. The public loves the Eagles. They're not going to fault the Rams for losing that game. So they're still going to be on the Rams coming into this New Orleans team that has looked bad for most of the season. But again, like I said, a lot of it was without Carr. A lot of it was without McCoy there. They've had a lot of other injuries too. The wide receiver injuries have been crazy. So this game, man, I mean, I don't know. I could see this game going both ways, to be honest. The market read looks like it's kind of indicating that you should take the Saints in this one if you play the side here. Rams, they're in this battle in the NFC West, though, and they still need to keep winning. But could be difficult. They're on a short week now because they played that primetime game, and that's a game where you step up emotionally for at the very least, and they lost the game. Now they have to go into New Orleans, and after that they get Buffalo, which is a big game, even though it's an out-of-conference game. Buffalo is good. Then they get San Fran right after that, and that's a big game as well. So this almost looks like you could argue this is a sandwich spot because it is sandwiched in between like bigger opponents on both sides of it. I just don't know if, because of that Philly game, if they're going to like be in bounce back mode after kind of an ugly loss or not. I'm not so sure. New Orleans, on the other hand, I believe, like I said, they're coming out of a bye, I'm pretty sure, right? Let me see. So that bye, I could see that going two ways too because they won 2 games going into that bye. So is that bye going to stop their momentum? Because when you're winning games, you don't really want to have a bye at that point. But on the other hand, that bye may have helped this really injury-plagued New Orleans team get a little bit healthier and get some of their guys back, and it might be helping them get McCoy back here. So I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not sure that bye is really going to be that disruptive to them. I could see them focusing on this game with the Rams because they don't have a bigger game up next against the Giants. So I could see the arguments that New Orleans would show up in this game. This one's a hard one for me to gauge, hard to read. And then Eagles-Ravens is probably the biggest game of the week here. This is a huge game, the Battle of the Birds. People are saying this might be a Super Bowl preview game here. I do have one interesting fact that I'm going to point out in this game that is so crazy that I had to go look. I'm like, really? That just seems insane to me, so I'll tell you about that in a minute. Ravens are a 3-point favorite at home, so they're basically just getting home field here. Odds makers, this is the type of game where the teams are almost even, and the odds makers, fuck it, just throw up a 3 and let the market do what it's going to do. The public is coming in a little bit on the Eagles side at 59% of the tickets. Looks like 62% of the cash also coming in on them. We got the highest total of the week here. It looks like at 51 down from 51.5. So I don't know if I'd want to come in and play an over in this one, though. I mean, I know it's the type of game where the public is going to love playing an over in this game because it's Jalen Hurts against Lamar Jackson. It's 2 teams that are perceived to have really good offenses, but these teams also can play defense. I mean, so, and it could be one of those kind of heavyweight type of fights where these teams are kind of feeling each other out at first because they don't really know each other. So I'm not sure that I would want to try to take a shot on the over in this one. So I would warn against that. Although I don't know if I want to really risk playing an under in a game where both teams can certainly still hurt you with their offenses as well. But this is a high total, man. Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, they're on a roll right now. They haven't lost since this game against Tampa, which was how long ago? I don't know, but the public loves the Eagles now because of what they've been doing. But how many of these wins were that impressive, though? I mean, let's really look at this. Holding Cincinnati's offense to 17 is pretty impressive. Sure, I'll give them that. But Cincinnati's defense isn't very good. And then, like, what other wins here are really that impressive? I mean, Dallas was without Dak in that game. We know how bad Dallas has been playing. Then Washington, that's pretty impressive. I'll give them that. And then the Rams, that was pretty impressive because the Rams do have their full arsenal of offense back. So, okay, sure. I mean, I'll give them all that. But now Philadelphia does have to go from the West Coast to East, although, as I'll point out in a second, both of these teams actually just played in L.A. So this is a weird scheduling spot where both teams played in one of the primetime games last week on the Pacific Coast, and they're both traveling back east. They're both East Coast teams that had to go out west last week for a primetime game. They're both coming back east. Philadelphia played in the Sunday night game, and Baltimore played in the Monday night game. So they're both on short rest with that weird coast-to-coast travel. But Philadelphia technically has a little bit of extra rest by a day because they played the Sunday night game. I'm not sure that that's really going to matter, but this is a second straight road game for Philadelphia, so it may be a little bit more of a difficult position for them because they're going into an environment that they're not really that familiar with. Baltimore, on the other hand, coming off that game against the Chargers, I mean, that was still a big win. It was a big divisional win, but they don't have anything upcoming that's bigger. Neither of these teams really have any type of look-ahead spot here. I mean, this is a big, hyped matchup, man, so both teams are going to show up for this, so when it's a matchup like that, you tend to want to just go with which team is the better team, essentially. And I probably would have to say it's the Baltimore Ravens out of these two teams here, even though the odds makers are kind of telling you they're both even. So it's tough to really gauge. But again, in a matchup like this where both teams are going to show up like this, probably that's the way you would want to look. And if the Ravens are kind of starting to look like they're maybe an anti-public home favorite here. So if the Eagles if you see the cash percentage shift around in this a little bit and the Eagles are really looking like they're actually a public road underdog here, those are sides you really do not want to be on. Tend to want to be on the favorite in market situations like that. The other thing I will point out here, which is the stat that I was going to say is absolutely insane to me. The stat that I heard when I first... I was listening to some handicappers talk about this. They said that Lamar Jackson in his career is 17-1 against NFC opponents. So I went back and I said, is that right? So I looked it up, and that is correct. Over the course of the last, I think, 4 seasons, he is 17-1 against NFC opponents. And the only loss, I believe, was a road game against the New York Giants for whatever reason. I didn't look to see what the situation was, and that was back in 2022 or 2021, one of those 2 seasons. So Lamar Jackson has not lost to an NFC opponent for multiple years. It's just, I don't know why. It's just crazy. Like, Baltimore, they just tend to step it up for these out-of-conference games or these out-of-conference foes. Like, maybe it's just because these foes that are unfamiliar with the Ravens, they just really get caught, and Harbaugh is just a really good coach, and these schemes just really throw off teams that haven't seen them before, and maybe that's really what it is. More so than Jackson himself. Maybe it's like the coaching schemes and stuff like that. It might be all of the above. But then I decided to go back further because I'm like, that's not Jackson's entire career. I kept going back, and in his last 23 games against NFC opponents, he's 22-1, going all the way back to, I think, 2020 or 2019. And then if you go over the course of his entire career, he's 23-3 against NFC opponents. But in his last 23 games against NFC opponents, he is, 22-1 in those games. I mean, that almost seems like a stat that you can't really ignore. For whatever the reason, Lamar Jackson or the Lamar Jackson Baltimore Ravens own NFC opponents, and I don't know why. So you're not gonna find me playing the Eagles in this one, as you could probably guess. What's up, Nick? Oh, you can't stay. You're gonna ditch me for creepy pasta? What's wrong with you, man? I used to I wouldn't say frequent that site, but I used to check it out once in a while. That is some weird shit over there, man. All right, now we'll talk about the 2 night games before I get out of here. Sunday night, tomorrow night, is San Francisco and Buffalo at Buffalo. This is an interesting game, man. Both of these games are kind of interesting for a multitude of reasons. This one is actually a matchup of 2 good opponents, too, so we get a pretty nice Sunday night game here. And it wasn't flexed. It looks like it was already scheduled to be the night game, and it still is. Bills are up from 3.5 to 6. I don't know when that 3 was out there, if that was a look ahead or what. But you got to pay attention to what the 49ers quarterback situation is. I think this line actually went up to 7, and then it came back down to 6 because I think initially it was at 7 because it looked like the 49ers are going to still be with Brandon Allen, who was their quarterback last week, which did not work out well for them. Brock Purdy was injured, and Brandon Allen started, and they got wiped by the Green Bay Packers there at Lambeau. Terrible game for the 49ers. But now it does look like Brock Purdy is coming back, and that can set up multiple different types of situations here, man, because, again, that's the reverse injured player spot. So Brock Purdy, if he's going to be back in there, it means there's like that little bit of an adjustment period where the 49ers have to readjust him being back. He has to reacclimate himself, but is it going to be that much of an adjustment period? Because the 49ers did just play with him 2 games ago, so he only missed 1 game. So I think the reverse injured player spot is a little bit more prevalent when it's a prolonged absence, but also one of the key parts of the reverse injured player spot is that when that player comes back, it usually impacts the line a lot, and in this case, it doesn't look like it did. So the Bills just went from a 7-point favorite to a 6-point favorite. I know 7 is a key number, but that's not that big of a move. Like, you would expect that in a quarterback difference that's that much between Allen and Purdy that there would be more of a move than that. And maybe it's just because Purdy hasn't really been officially announced yet. So maybe when he is officially announced, this line is going to drop further. So I would say, I guess, if you do like the 49ers, you got to grab this number because I don't think it's going to go up any higher. And you missed out on the 7, which isn't that great, but it's probably going to wind up landing lower than 6 if Brock Purdy does come back. But even if that is the case, it seems like the 49ers may actually be being undervalued slightly on that line because they have a bad record this season. But again, they've had a lot of injuries to deal with this season. In the Super Bowl loser curse, they've been without Christian McCaffrey almost the entire season. But I believe he is there now. He's back. The one key guy who's really out here is Brandon Ayuk is out for the season. Other than that, it looks like and Trent Williams is out as well, so that's kind of big as well. He's probably the best offensive lineman for the 49ers, offensive tackle, so he's out. But other than that, it looks like pretty much the 49ers are going to have most of their guys there for this one, so that's not bad, assuming that Brock Purdy is coming back and he's going to play. So 49ers, again, maybe being undervalued just a little bit here because the 49ers, I mean, they're still pretty good on both sides of the ball. I mean, this is still a lot of the same guys that they had last year. This is not a horrible team. 49ers have to, keep the pedal to the metal, man, because they're in that NFC West where any team could win that division right now. If they want to make the playoffs, they got to keep going, man. They got to fight for that division. So they have reason to keep playing here. And with Christian McCaffrey there and with San Francisco being able to run the ball, Buffalo does not defend against the run that well. So San Francisco's offensive strength running the football actually matches up decently against Buffalo's defensive weakness, which is against the run. So San Francisco does have that edge as well a little bit there. San Francisco, they're coming off an ugly loss at Green Bay. Like I said, without Brock Purdy there, Brandon Allen did not have a good game for them. They got smashed by Green Bay. Green Bay is a good opponent, though, but now they have to go out to Buffalo. But that trip actually may not be as bad because cold weather to cold weather, man. So because they played in Green Bay last week, they've actually kind of adjusted to playing in cold weather already. And granted, yeah, they didn't do well in that game. And this is going to be another cold, possibly snowy game in Buffalo. So that is something to keep in mind. The San Francisco Pacific Coast team, they just might not play well in environments like that. That's true. So that's something to keep in mind. That's one reason why I really don't want the 49ers here. Just the snow and cold aspect of this may hurt them too much in this game, but at least they've kind of adjusted to it with that game against Green Bay, even though usually I would say a second straight road game is also not the greatest spot, but the 49ers still need to keep winning games, man. And this game is going to be, 30 degrees and snowy, but I think it looks like the snow in Buffalo is coming in right now. It looks like it's coming in tonight and into the morning, and it's not going to actually be snowing anymore once the game starts. So take from that what you will, but I think the weather won't be that bad once the game is being played. I think the field will probably be clear enough by then. Unfortunately, because I love snow games, and the NFL seems to be trying to do away with them, but who didn't love that snow game with Jameis Winston the other day, man? The Cleveland-Pittsburgh one, that's the best of the NFL. That's the best of football. That's what we like to see. But whatever. San Francisco also, by the way, if they are having to play in conditions like that, they're going to be running the football more. And that's kind of what they want to do anyway, is run the football because that's what they do best. So I don't think that's going to really hurt San Francisco offensively that much. Buffalo, on the other hand, they are actually more of a pass offense, if you didn't know, with Josh Allen there. So Buffalo, they don't have as great a ground game there in Buffalo. So the weather, even though they're used to weather like that because they are the Buffalo Bills, they play up there. But it might impact them a little bit more just because their ground game really isn't that great this year. Buffalo is also sitting at 9-2 right now, so it's Does Buffalo actually have reason to be totally focused on the 49ers, even though I know it is the 49ers? They're a named team. They won the Western Conference, the NFC last year. But Buffalo, I mean, they have such a huge padding in the AFC East that it's like, I don't know if they have reason to go full bore on every single one of these games, man. But it is Sunday night, and they are hosting it. So because it's a primetime game on Sunday night, they still might have reason to show up because you don't want to put in a bad performance on Sunday night usually. But might they overlook this game a little bit? Maybe. I mean, they don't have a bigger opponent up next, though, with the Rams. So they actually play 3 straight NFC teams in a row, which is kind of wild. A little bit of a weird scheduling quirk there. Buffalo is also coming out of a bye. And they went into that bye. I don't think that bye is going to be helpful to them, man, because they went into that bye having won 6 games in a row, and they finished it up by beating Kansas City. Huge win, obviously, when you beat the defending champ Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are also the team that eliminated Buffalo from the playoffs last year, so that was playoff revenge. Huge revenge spot. Huge win for Buffalo there. And Buffalo, I mean, Kansas City is like the team that they can't beat, basically, the team that they can't get over the hump with, even though I know Buffalo has beaten them in the regular season multiple times now, but still, that's a huge win for Buffalo. And to go into the bye on that, it's like, are you really going to use that bye to fix things? Like, what do you have to fix when you've won 6 games in a row and you just got that huge win against, like, maybe the best team in the NFL, or the team that has the NFL rigged towards them the most, the Kansas City Chiefs? I don't think you're going to be using that bye really that advantageously when you go into the bye on that note. So I would lean to taking the points with the 49ers. All that being said, Bills are public. As I said, 89% of the tickets and only 76% of the cash. So that's the way I would look in that game, but not a strong lean for me. And to finish it up, I actually like the Monday night game a little bit better. Browns-Broncos. Broncos are down from 6.5 to 5.5 with 80% of the tickets and 76% of the cash on the Broncos. So the Broncos are public, and it looks like the line has moved a little bit against that public sentiment, against the public Broncos, and it looks like less of the cash is on the Broncos, but I actually disagree with that move and that market read there and that sentiment there. I would only lay the points with the Broncos here, and I think it's actually strong enough that I almost did it. I'm actually still considering it. I mean, I have until Monday night to do it, and I don't know if this line's going to go back up, which it might by Monday night. I mean, because it is you're going to be looking at a public Broncos team on Monday night, so it is possible that that the line does actually start going up again. So if you do like the Broncos, and I do, maybe we actually should be playing this about now. I haven't done it yet, but I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I'm actually going to do it, but I like the spot. I mean, I don't like fading market reads like that, though. I'm taking really public Monday night teams where the market looks like it's indicating against them, but the public is not always wrong. The Broncos are obviously public just because they've won multiple games in a row again now. Bo Nix is getting hyped up now. Everybody's liking how he's been playing recently. The Broncos coming off a couple games where they looked awesome. I mean, they almost beat Kansas City. They only lost on a blocked field goal. I thought they were in a bad spot after that near win over Kansas City, and they still absolutely crushed the Atlanta Falcons. Then they came off of that, and they had a pretty easy win, divisional game against the Raiders, though the Raiders should have covered at the end of that game, though, by the way. Gardner Minshew got injured in that game, RIP. So he was out, and Aiden O'Connell was actually hurt. And Desmond Ridder came into the game and drove them down the field, and they literally got down to the 1-inch line, and it looked like at first they had gotten in for a touchdown that would have cut the lead back to 3, assuming that they got the extra point. And they had to cover like a 5.5-point spread or whatever, and it was ruled not a touchdown, so they had first and goal at the 1-inch line, basically, and they still didn't score. And that's just brutal, man. So the Raiders definitely should have covered that game, and they were hanging in that game most of the time, but still, public likes what they see out of the Broncos. That's another win for the Broncos. Divisional win. It doesn't really matter that much because it was against Vegas, even though I know, or the Raiders, even though I know Denver does not have a good history playing on the road against the Raiders. They do not win very often there. But now they get to face Cleveland on Monday night. And the thing about that is that it's a Monday. If you're hosting a Monday night game, you're probably not going to overlook that team. And for Bo Nix, I mean, I think it's his first Monday night primetime game that he's playing in at home, I assume. So Denver does have reasons to actually get up for this game because it's Monday night. They're hosting it. They don't really have a bigger opponent up next, really. Although, well, Indy, I mean, debatably, I guess, because they're going to be battling Indy for a wild card spot and battling the Chargers for a wild card spot as well. So maybe you could debate maybe that this spot is actually the team that they would overlook the most remaining on their schedule. So maybe I'll just stay off of this because there are maybe reasons why the Broncos would overlook the Browns here, but I think the Browns are in a much worse spot, man. I mean, look at what they're coming off of. Even though they have extra rest, they just beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in that Thursday night snow game, man, where I played the Browns there. Pittsburgh was coming off their much bigger win against the Baltimore Ravens. That was a letdown spot for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh overlooked Cleveland. Cleveland had a real fun time in that game, man. They were all pumped up for that game. Jameis Winston was on fire. I mean, he was really happy in that game, really pumped up. Everybody was going crazy. That was almost like a Super Bowl type of atmosphere for Cleveland. And now after they do that and they get their like biggest win of the year against the Pittsburgh Steelers with that in Baltimore, I guess. And of course, look what they did after they remember this, after they beat Baltimore, their other big win of the season. They played the Chargers, and I think the market looked like it was actually indicating on the Browns in that game, and I said, I don't agree with it. I think I agree with the Chargers. I almost wanted to play with the Chargers there. It was no sweat. Cleveland had an awful letdown performance there, and the Chargers easily beat them at home. So we could see more of that for Cleveland here. And look at what Cleveland's doing here, man. And that extra time off, I think, won't help them as much because when you have extra time off after a huge win like that, you're kind of basking in that win, man. I think that win just kind of snowballs a little bit, pun intended, after that nice snow win there. I think you're sitting around thinking about that win more and kind of basking in it. So I don't think that's going to help as much. And now they have to go out into high elevation to Denver, which is not a place they play that often. I don't know how often Jameis Winston has played there. Maybe never. I don't know. Probably not a lot at the very least. So they have to go out there and do that. And then who do they have up next? Oh, yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers again. Up next, they have to play Pittsburgh again, and then Kansas City. So they're in a Pittsburgh sandwich, man. They're in a steel sandwich. They're in a Primanti Brothers sandwich, man. So it's a gay leftist diabetes sandwich that's just stuffed with all types of French fries and all types of junk that's going to give you a heart attack and give you a diabetic coma and kill you almost instantly. So that's the type of sandwich they're in here. A steel sandwich for these AFC North foes is never really a good spot to be in, man. And going out, it's also having to go out into mountain time for a late night game there. So that's actually not great either because that's a game that's going to end at whatever. It's going to end at 11 p.m. Eastern time, right? It's going to end at 11 p.m. Cleveland time, so it's going to maybe fuck with their biological clock a little bit too. So all that being said, I actually like the Denver side in that one, but maybe not quite going to make my card because there are just some questions as far as will the Broncos actually be totally focused on the Cleveland Browns? That's the only question we got there. This looks like it's going to be an ugly game too, by the way, so I usually talk about totals in these night games, and in this one, the under might make sense. The total's up from 40 to 41.5, juice to the over, but 53% of the tickets on the over and 65% of the cash on the under. I mean, the under, like I said, probably makes sense in this one. You got a Browns team that they give up a lot of sacks, and the Broncos get a lot of sacks. You're looking at two pretty good defenses here and two pretty questionable offenses here, in my opinion. So I think you could be looking at an under type of game in this one, a defensive struggle in this game where both teams are better defensively than offensively. In the 49ers-Bills game, the total's down from 47 to 44.5, but I think that's probably a reaction to the weather, and I think it may be an overreaction. And you're seeing now 59% of the tickets on the under and 52% of the cash on the under, so I would look to take that over if I was going to play the total in that one. There's a lot of times when bad weather is anticipated and the market reacts to it. A lot of times it's an overreaction. And like I said, I don't think it's going to still be snowing, or at least not that much when the game starts. And at least to some extent, man, if it's just that the field is kind of slick and whatever, and there are no visibility issues or wind issues, because that's the thing. The things that really affect the offense are visibility and wind, that can really affect like the ability to throw the ball, the ability to kick. If it's really just that it's a slick surface, that actually helps the offense a little bit, in my opinion, because the defense is those are the guys that have to react to what the offense is doing. So the offense, they're like those players know which way they're moving, and the defense has to anticipate it. So the defense can be thrown off a little bit more if that's the case. So I don't mind that. And especially with two pretty capable offenses there, 49ers, Bills, although 49ers probably more equipped to actually deal with slick surfaces, actually, even though, like I said, they might not be good in cold weather, really, but because they run the ball and they do a lot of short passing and run the ball a lot, they're pretty equipped to handle conditions like that, to be honest. The Bills, actually, maybe less so, but the Bills are at least used to playing in it. So those are my thoughts on all those games, man. All of that being said, we got an hour and a half video here. I did an hour and a half college, hour and a half talked about every single NFL game, man. I don't think I've done that yet in one of these videos. Maybe I shouldn't do it again, but I mean, if you like it, you can let me know. My two actual plays remaining after I'm 0-1 this week with the Miami Dolphins. My two plays Sunday are the Atlanta Falcons plus 1.5 and the New York Jets plus 2. Whatever number you can get on those. I mean, it's really just playing the small underdog and probably assuming they're going to win the game. I think those are the two best situations there. Let's do it. JC, Nate, Nick, hi to all you guys. Thanks for hanging out, all you guys. I don't know if was anybody else in the chat tonight. I think it was just you three in the chat. There are a few extra viewers, maybe. That's going to do it for me, man. Late night again here tonight. A little bit less late than last night, though. Last night I started later because I was watching that insane 8 overtime game in the Georgia Tech game. That is wild. We're going to see how the college football playoff field is panning out here. That's going to do it for me. I'm Tower Gang Toad. You can follow me on Twitter for all my shit posting and follow the Tower Gang podcast for the most offensive comedy podcast out there, man. Excuse me. And patreon.com/Tower Gang to give us some support, and you get bonus content, live pre-show, live post-show, the craziest post-show ever probably this week, which some of these guys like JC will probably attest to. Excuse me. Man, I just can't get over this Mexican food. We'll probably attest to. And you get to hang out with us in a Telegram, submit to the mailbag, etc. And go follow flapper.net, FLAPPR.net. They got some cool merch as well, but they focus on beautiful women, some sports, and some political takes, and some history as well, all with a tinge, more than a tinge, I would say, of humor there. So follow those guys as well, and I'll be running the betting odds for their Milkers of the Year awards, which I have way too much to do, man. I still have to get those updated again. I feel like I have way too much on my plate, and I can never get it done. So between all these different podcasts that I'm doing, all the betting that I'm doing, and actual work, it's just madness, man. Whatever. I don't get enough sleep. All right, man. Thanks, guys, for showing up for the show. That's going to do it. I'm Tower Gang Toad once again. Let's have a good one, and let's get some wins on Sunday. And I'll be back in the morning to talk about whatever other sports are being played on Sunday. And hopefully it's not a huge card. It usually isn't on Sunday, but we'll see. Peace out, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.